Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial for installing and configuring PyCharm for one of my courses um, on macOS. So just a warning here to YouTubers who found their way here who are not in my class. The value to the general public from this tutorial is not going to be high. So feel free to stay, but be forewarned. Um, okay, so let's get started. You should already know from one of the previous tutorials that I teach two basic Python-related courses. One is an introduction to Python, and the other is an introduction to web frameworks using Django. And so there are really two audiences who play these tutorials. And what I'm going to do here is what I've done in the other ones is I'm going to cover how to install the product and configure it for a regular Python project like we would use in the Introduction to Python course. And then I'm going to invite only the people who are interested in Django to stay, and we're going to do the same thing for Django projects. Okay. So in one of my courses, let's just pick a course that's going on right now, the frameworks course at the University of Illinois. In our weekly schedule, we have a link to, we have a bunch of things related to installing PyCharm Professional. And we're entitled to a free copy of the really all of the JetBrains tools, of which PyCharm is one, by virtue of the fact that you are a student at a university and I'm a faculty member. So if we click on this link here, JetBrains free individual licenses for students and faculty members, it'll take you to the place where you sign up. Now I'm already signed up, okay? So what will you do? You'll click on Apply Now, and you'll fill out the form, and very quickly you'll have the ability to go forward. So how do you go forward? Well, you go to the JetBrains site. I mean, this is how I do it when I've had a license for a while. I go to the JetBrains site by clicking on this JetBrains icon. Okay. And it's going to, when I go to this person icon, it's going to show me the information for my account. And right now, it looks like I'm already logged in. So let me log out. So if I tried to do that, if I go back here, if I try to do that without being logged in, it would give me a login page. Okay, so this is a login that I have for my work at the University of Illinois. So I click on that and I sign in. And I get a list of the licenses that I have. And the license that I always recommend to people is that they get the license for the product pack or whatever the equivalent thing is now. This allows you to install PyCharm, but a lot of other things too. So if you get the idea that you want a different version of PyCharm or you want to try out one of their other products, you'll be able to easily do that. Okay, so up here, once you've signed up for one of their license deals, you'll have it listed here. There's a little download link, so click on that, and you can pick these individual apps. Or what I prefer to do is to get the Toolbox app. Now I have to confess, I don't think I've successfully uninstalled the Toolbox app from my Mac. I tried, but it doesn't seem to have worked, but we'll see. So when I click on this, it may behave a little differently for me because I've already installed it before than for you, so be aware. So if I click on the Toolbox app, and it's going to give me a .dmg file, a typical installer file. So I'm going to click download. Um, and I can see down here from the animation that my DMG file is downloading. So let's open, so create a new Finder window. There it is. And let's go to downloads. And here it is, JetBrains Toolbox. So this is a typical DMG file. You just have to double click on it. So that's what I do. That should start the installer. Okay, once you've got that going, you don't really need your browser any longer. I'm just going to go back and close my browser. And the dialog for this install has popped up on my other monitor, so let me bring it over. So we take this JetBrains Toolbox and we drag it to the applications folder, and pretty soon we're going to get up on the other monitor. I got something that showed all the files being copied, and that's pretty much that. Okay, so how do I run it the first time? Well, the way that I run it the first time is, again, in the Finder, I go to Applications, and there should be under JetBrains Toolbox. There it is, JetBrains Toolbox. It's installed. All right, let's give it a double click. So JetBrains Toolbox. When you start it up, what does it do on the Mac? Well, it places an icon. This is one of these apps that's kind of always running. It gets automatically started up. So it places an icon up here that looks like a cube. When you hover it over, it says Toolbox. So let's click on that. And then you get the drop down. And you can see all these things that you can install, okay, which I really like. Now, one of the things that you're going to see is that there's several versions of PyCharm. There's the educational version that you don't need a license for, okay? We're not going to use that, all right? We get a free license to the paid version that you can use as long as you have a university email, and we're going to take full advantage of that. So the PyCharm options, PyCharm Professional, that's the paid version. PyCharm Community is like the educational version. It's a free version, but it doesn't have all the capabilities of PyCharm Professional. One of the reasons that we use PyCharm Professional in my courses is I only want to use one version, and the Django capabilities are only in the Professional version. Okay, so since it's free to us, that's what we do. So we're going to come over here and click on Install, and it's checking for updates. And one of the things that you'll find is that throughout the year, the JetBrains folks will update PyCharm. And how will you know that? Well, I think sometimes they send emails. Okay. So now it's going to be downloading and installing and all that. But the other thing you can do and we'll see this in a couple of minutes when this thing is fully installed, is that from time to time, if you go up and you click on that toolbox icon, it will show you all the installed tools that you have, and if there's an update available, it will show you. And you can update an individual application, or you can do an update all. There's even from time to time a new version of Toolbox, and there's a link to update that. It's very well behaved software. So now we're going to wait, and I'm going to pause you while we're waiting. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to start up PyCharm, and we're going to create our first PyCharm Python project. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to go up to the top and find this cube for PyCharm. I'm sorry, for JetBrains toolbox. So let's click on that. It'll bring up the panel. And if we want to start a PyCharm Professional, we'll simply click on that. And the splash screen is coming up on my other monitor. Okay. And when the splash screen is done, we get this. We get the dialog. Okay. And let's say we want to create a new project. So right here, create a new project. Okay. Now, I've been using, I have a lot of PyCharm projects on my machine. You're probably going to come up and, you might just be pointed to users and your ID. Okay. What I've done is I decided that my Python projects are going to go into my documents directory, and then a subdirectory called my Python course projects. Now, so you can do all that kind of stuff. Okay. And then so you pick where you want these to go. And I just want to point out that this Untitled 1 is the name of the project. It'd be nice if that were in a separate text box, but it's not. So let's call this my, this is all lowercase, words separated by underscores, my first PyCharm project. Okay, looks good. And let's say what sort of interpreter we're going to use for it. Existing interpreter, new environment, project interpreter. This is looking a little different than what I'm expecting. Let's try existing interpreter. No interpreter. So existing interpreter, let's come, we don't have one. So let's come over here and click on the ... icon. So radio button, existing interpreter. This we're going to point it to an existing Condo virtual environment. Okay. So now we're going to click on the ... button. Okay. And now we have a place where we can say, well, what kind of environment are we going to use? Is it virtual env? No, we don't use those in our class. We use Condo environments. So click on that. Okay. Do we want to say make available to all projects? Sure, that's okay. We can use this environment a lot. Okay, now we're not pointed to one yet. Okay. Well, oddly enough, we are. We're pointed to one called E4 Trainer Python course, but you probably won't be yet. This is because I did this before. So how do we do this? Well, click on the ... Okay. And now you're going to have to find your way to the file that points to the Python interpreter in your environment. All right, so your Anaconda files, if you did the install the way I showed you how to do, should be under users, your ID, then open that. Now come down, you want to find the directory called, it doesn't have a period in front of it, it's called Anaconda 3, so open that, okay. And you want to find the subdirectory called envs, that's your environments. And then you should have one for each of the environments that you created. Okay, so you want to open up E for Trainer Python course. Okay, and we want to point it to the Python interpreter that we want. So we don't really point it to the environment, but we point it to the Python interpreter that's in the environment. So we open up the subdirectory bin. We're going to come all the way down. We're going to find an entry for Python. Okay, there's a lot of other Python-like things. There's Python 3, Python 3 config, all that kind of stuff. No, we want this this file that's called Python. If you look to the left of it, it's actually a placeholder. It's a shortcut to the real Python file, but that's what we want, the one called Python. Click on OK. All right, and that's what we want. So we picked the Python interpreter that's in the environment that we want. It knows that we are using the Condo stuff. It knows we want to make it available to all projects. That'll mean in the future when we create a Python project, we're not going to have to go through all this work of hooking up to the virtual environment. And then we're just going to say OK. And now down here, we're going to click on Create. So, came up on my other monitor. Let's bring it over. All right, it's a little too big to fit on this one. Let's resize it a bit. Okay, good. So you'll see that in this project, there's a directory. This is a navigator panel for the project. And the first entry is the project itself. Okay, we don't have anything under it yet, but we will soon. These are the external libraries. Okay, so this is the Python 3.7 external library. And scratches and consoles is not something we're currently using. Okay, so how do you create a Python program to go in your project? Well, this works like a lot of IDEs, integrated development environments work. You right-click on the name of the project, my first PyCharm project, and then from the drop-down you pick New. Okay, and you can create a lot of different kind of files, but we want a Python file. Okay, and what's the name going to be? Well, it's going to be called Goodbye Cruel World. So why is it going to be called that? Well, there's a tradition in introductory programming courses of writing something called Hello World. And so we're sick of doing that. So we're going to do something a little more cynical. So press return. And I've got version control turned on here. So I'm not going to use that. Okay, that's not something that we're going to be using right now, at least. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, I'm going to show you how to write a very simple program in the way that we learned to write it in our introductory Python course. So the first thing that we usually do is we put the name of the file, Goodbye Cruel World, .py, we put that up on the first line. Okay, we're going to turn that into a comment in a minute. And on the second one, we write some kind of summary comment that says what the intention of the program is. Okay, and we're going to say demonstrate writing a line of text to the console, which is we're going to write a line of text that says goodbye cruel world. Okay, return. Okay, so you'll see the red underline here. That's showing that the Python interpreter environment doesn't like what we have because it's not proper Python. That's because these are comments. So how do we turn something into a comment? Well, we can do this. We can put a # space in front of it, and you can see it changes color and typeface. Or you can toggle, let's undo that. You can toggle one or more lines into and out of being treated as comments by highlighting the block that you want to do it for. And on the Mac, you hold down a command and then the normal slash, the right slash, and it toggles the whole thing into a comment. Now, if you do that again, it toggles it out of a comment. Do it again, it toggles it into a comment. Okay. All right, so we're going to learn how we create this. Now, in our class, we're going to put all of our code in some function or other. And the high-level function in our Python program is always going to be called main. So we type def, that's to define a function, main, empty parens, which says it doesn't have any arguments or parameters. And then we say colon. And now it wants code for the main function. And what are we going to put? Well, we're going to ask it to print, because that's the command for print. And then in the parentheses, we're going to pass a simple character string, which we're going to place in single quotes. So when we type one single quote, we get the second one automatically. That's a convenience feature. And we're going to say goodbye, comma, cruel world. And maybe an exclamation point. Okay, now are we all done? No, we're not all done yet. Okay, why? Well, because the code that's in a function doesn't execute until you call the function. And so down at the very bottom, we're going to skip 2 blank lines. We're just going to have an invocation to the main function. And then we're just going to have a character return at the end. Okay. And this is going to print out goodbye, cruel world. Okay, great. Now, how do we do that? Well, the easiest way for me to do this is just to click somewhere in this editor panel and right click and say run goodbye cruel world. And it's going to pop up a console down here, and it's going to run the program, and you're just going to see the output goodbye cruel world. And that's it. Okay. A couple things I'm just going to point out. In our class, we're going to want to follow the rules of style for Python, and they're given in a standard called PEP8, PEP-8. And this editing environment that we use checks our work for conformance to PEP-8 style. And if it passes, you're going to find a green check mark up in the right. Okay. Now, what happens if we, instead of having 2 blank lines in front of main, we only have 1? Well, you're going to see couple things. I had a click in the editor to get it to change, but you're going to see a squiggly gray underline under def main. And then if you hover over that, it's going to say PEP 8, that's the style guide, expected 2 blank lines, found 1. Okay, so before a function, we always need 2 blank lines. Look over here on the right side, instead of having a check mark in the upper right, we have sort of a beige block. And if we hover over that, we should get the complaint. Analysis completed, 1 week warning found. Okay, and then if we go down here, you can see where the problem is by hovering over that. And it tells us what the error was. Okay, that's good. Now let's go over and add a blank line before. Added the blank line. Okay, that's good. Now click somewhere in the editor again. And now it runs the check. And there's a green check mark up there. Okay, so you need 2 blank lines in front of a function. What about after? Well, I've got 2 and it seems to like it. What if I get rid of 1? Doesn't like that. What if I get rid of them both? It doesn't like that either. So let's hover over the squiggly gray line. And it said expected 2 blank lines after a class or function. Definition found 0 blank lines. And look, we no longer have the green check. And we have a little indicator of where the problem is. All right, so I'm just going to do an undo, which on the Mac is a Command Z. I have to do that twice, I guess. So it fixed that. So now I'm going to click somewhere in the editor again, and it got my check mark back. Okay, now I have a carriage return at the end of main, which gives me an empty line on line 10. These are the line numbers. What happens if I don't have that? What if I just end after the word main on line 9? Well, guess what? It's going to complain about that. PEP 8, no new line at end of file. Okay. And look, our green check has gone again. Okay, so again, let's just do a return, which is a new line. And okay, it cleared the gray squiggly, and let's just click in the middle of the editor, and I've got my green check back. Okay, so what we're going to do in our class is we're going to do, even with a very simple program, we're going to try to get used to these PEP 8 style guidelines. And we're always going to be looking for this green check mark in the upper right to make sure that whatever complaints the environment has about our code style are resolved before we hand in our work. Okay, and again, if we want to run this, now there are 2 ways we're able to run it. We can run it the same way. We can right-click in the editor panel and say, run goodbye cruel world. But a lot of times when you're programming and testing, you want to change some code and run a test. As long as you have this a Python execution environment panel up, you can run it again just by clicking the play button down here to the left of it. So every time you click it, you run it again. So it ran it again, it ran it again, it ran it again, it ran it again. All right. So if you're in the introductory Python course, this is all you need to know. You know how to create a very simple PyCharm project that's plain old Python programming. You have hooked up the project with the environment that we created in Anaconda, the one called E4 Trainer Python course. And that's what you're going to do on a regular basis throughout the course. If you're in the Django course, though, you're probably not going to leave us now. You're probably going to want to continue on. Okay. So what if we're in the Django course? Well, we need to create another PyCharm project. So let's take a look at that. So we're going to let's close the PyCharm environment. In on the Mac, when you close the window for the PyCharm environment, you come back to this dialog where you pick what you want to do. There's a history of projects where you've been, so you can click on those and go to it. Okay. If you want to create a new project, you just click on Create New Project, and here we are. So, do we want a pure Python project? No, we don't. The next option is a Django project. Perfect. Okay, so here we are. All right, so I'm going to put it in the same place that I put all my other projects. You know, what is a project? Well, it's a named directory that has all the right subdirectories and files under it. Okay, so what am I going to call mine? Well, I'm going to call this I already have one called my first Django project, I think. So I'm going to call this one my next uh, Django project. You can call yours whatever you want. Django project. So, all right, we've said where the project is going to be, and remember, you always have to say what it's going to be called, or it'll be called something like Untitled 1 or Untitled 2, some really useless name. Okay, project interpreter. Do we want the one for the Trainer Python course? We do not. That doesn't have enough of the packages in it. So let's go here under project interpreter. Okay. And we know we want an existing interpreter. That's an existing environment. We don't want this one. Okay. That was the one for the Python course. Let's go off the end, click on the ... button. Okay, and now we're going to configure it in a very similar way. Do we want a virtual env? No, we want the second one, a Condo environment. Okay. Do we want to make it available to all projects? Yeah, we're going to want to use this environment often. So click Make Available to All Projects. The Condo executable is over here. That's properly populated. But the interpreter, again, isn't this nice? It picked the one for the Django course. Now, I don't know whether this is just, I think what probably happened is from the last time I did this, because I tested this out before, it probably is doing it from that. But so if in fact on yours, it's currently pointing at E4 Trainer Django course, you're done. You can pick OK. What if it wasn't? How do you find your way there? Well, you click on the ... button. Okay. And now you come down to the file system. So it's under users, your ID, mine's Kevin Trainer. And again, you don't want any of the directories that begin with period or dot. But you do want the one called Anaconda 3. So open that up. Okay. And the environments are in a subdirectory called envs. Okay. And you want E4 Trainer Django course, but remember, we don't want to pick an environment here. We're trying to pick a Python interpreter. So we want to go in the directory for E4 Trainer Django course, and we want to go in the bin subdirectory. Okay, and we want to find the file that points to the Python interpreter, and it's just called, it's a shortcut to, and it's called Python. and then we say OK, and then we click on OK again, and then we click on Create. Uh, Here, and we're set right there. Okay. Alrighty. So, um, one thing that you do want to check on your Python projects, no matter how you created one, if you created one at the command line, the first project that we do in our Django course is we actually do two iterations of this thing called the Django Girls site. And the directions when we go to the tutorial for that, they have you doing all this at the command line. And my instructions for you is you can either come over here and use PyCharm, or you could do it at the command line. I just want to point out that you can open a Django project in PyCharm, whether you create it with PyCharm or not. When you first open it, it may not be properly configured for PyCharm. Okay. And what are the things that you need to do? Well, one thing is you need to make sure that you're pointing to a proper interpreter in a proper environment. Okay. So how would you do that if you were opening a project and you didn't know that it was, usually if it's not pointed at a proper interpreter, you'll get a little warning up here. But you can go up to the menu, click on PyCharm, Preferences, and now you're going to see, you'll see Project Interpreter. Oh, this is good. Now what if we were up here? Well, we'd come down here under Project, and we click on Project Interpreter. Okay. Now let's look at what we have here. We've got Django 2.2.4. We've got PyTs, and we've got SQL parse. Okay. So we have everything that we need here. There is a thing down here at the bottom where you can, right now we're looking at using the Condo package manager, and we have everything we want. Now if we click on this one with the eye, show early releases, no, we don't want that. So just Condo package manager will work fine. Oh, I'm sorry. If we just have what's in the Condo package manager, these are the things. These are Django, PyTs, and SQL parse are there. I think if we click on that again, we'll see the full version. And we click on that again, we get the short version. I think these are things that were done at the command line. Perhaps not by us, but by the tool. And we click it again. We're going to get the full list. Whoop, sorry. I keep clicking on it accidentally. Okay, so now we know we've got the proper environment. That's great. Okay, is that enough? Well, if you created this project in Django, okay, that's enough. Okay, as long as you have it connected up with the right environment, that's great. If in fact you did not do that, you're going to want to also click on Project Structure. Okay. On Project Structure, no, not Project Structure, excuse me. You're going to want to go down to Languages and Frameworks. So let's open up Languages and Frameworks. And there's a bunch of different options, and we're a Django project, so go down to Django. And make sure that the Django root points to your project root. Okay. And we're eventually going to learn about a settings file. This actually points to the setting file that's within the Django root, which is good. And that's just what we need. And this thing here, this checkbox, enable Django support. You want to make sure you have that too. Okay, and now we're just going to click on OK, and now we have everything we need. Okay, all right. Now, what are we going to do with our Django project? Well, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to run um, the development server, and we're just going to see a basic splash page that it puts up. So we haven't really configured any code. We just have the bare bones here. How would we start the server? Well, go up to the menu, look at tools, okay? And we want to do this run manage.py task, okay? If you don't have run manage.py task, then what do you want to do? I think you want to make sure that you're on the name of the project, okay? You also want to make sure that it's configured the right way. There are times, for instance, if you haven't in the preferences, if you accidentally under this languages and frameworks, which is the last thing that we did, and if you go down to Django, there are times where if you created this, you didn't create it with Django. There are times where this enabled Django support is not properly checked. Or maybe this Django project root is not pointing to your project. Okay, so if you don't get that menu entry, make sure you've got these things correct and click on OK. So let's go up again. We're going up to Tools, Run Manage.py, a task, and it's going to pop up a console down here at the bottom. So it runs a program for us, manage.py, and it feeds it a bunch of instructions. One instruction that we're going to learn about is run server. So let's just type in RUN, and there's auto completion. So I'm just going to double click on run server. You are able to put options after the word run server. So we don't want any options. We just want to click return. And it is going to fire up the server. Very nice. So here's a link to my development server. And if I click on it, I'm going to open it in my default browser. And let's do that. And that opened up on my other monitor. So let's make sure, let's make it the size that it should be. And here it is. So my default browser at this point is Firefox. And it says the install works successfully. Congratulations. This is all that we're looking for. And we could view the release notes for Django 2.2. Well, that's good. We could look at that. That brings us to part of the Django documentation. But that's it. Okay, are we done? No, we're not done. Why? Well, because if we want to stop the server, okay, it says here we can quit the server with Control C. Okay, even if I click down here and I hit Control C, I usually do not stop the server. Okay, that's because we're running the server under, that's the version control stuff again. We're running the server under PyCharm. And so that's not the way to stop it. How can you stop it? Well, generally when you're running things under PyCharm, you have, when they're running, there is a stop button, a red rectangle appears. So click that. Stop currently running process. Click that and it stops the server. I say that because if in fact you don't stop the server and you go to start the server again, it'll tell you it's already running, which may or may not be what you want. Okay, so that's it. We created essentially an empty Django project We checked that it was properly configured. We started up the development server with run server, and then we clicked on our link, um, unable to connect. Why? Because we stopped it. How about that? Uh, let's start it again. Run server, and it starts up again. And now it's really going to work. There it is. Okay, so we proved we actually stopped the server, and now I'll stop the server again. Okay, now that's it. We're not going to teach you Django. We just want you to configure it. This is the way that we're going to do most of our Django projects, unless we get specific instructions. Otherwise, this is the way we're going to start a Django project. And that's a lot. I apologize for the length, but that's what it took. And I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye bye.